I've seen him throw some big 9-year NFL vet. Darius J. Butler is here. Good to see. Jacoby Brissett can spin it. I've seen him hit 17-yard hots.
Look, I would love for Jacoby to do that, but he just hasn't. And I don't know.
Well, is he a lot?
Absolutely.
He's just warming up, brother.
Yeah, and also he's just keeping the ball. We got a good defense. I don't need to turn it over. And I like the fact that this conversation is about how the Patriots gave it a go. Seattle Seahawks, for real deal.
Oh, yeah, that's a good football team.
Seattle Seahawks, a good football
Geno
team.
looked real good
Geno Smith is the dog, one half of the hammer. Don. Cowboys, AP Tone. Tone, how many people were betting on the Seahawks yesterday, and are they a good bet? And has there been any update on where the money is this evening, as we know that the sports books are swinging an incredibly legendary hot bat right now whenever it comes to picking games?
Yeah, the Seahawks were one of the teams that were getting 75% or more of the bets. They pushed, so there was not a loser in that situation. It was 3 when the game went off, and that's what it finished at, -3. Tonight, 50-50 currently is the percentage of bets for tonight's game. So the money is leaning towards the Eagles, but the percentage of bets, the number of tickets, 50-50.
All right, I don't know what that means, but I'll tell you, congrats to the sportsbook seemingly having it all figured out. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, is a former Super Bowl champion, a Ryder Cup winner, a college football national champion, and a former president of Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, the father of 10, AJ Hawk.
Yeah, Hawker.
Hey. Hawker, sportsbooks are doing good, pal. They are winning. They are beating the shit. What were the numbers from the first hour that the sportsbooks did this past weekend?
So favorites were 5-9-1 against the spread. 6 of 9 games where the public was on 75% or more of the bets there lost. So yeah, sportsbook was doing pretty. And the unders were 9-5-1, and most of the public is a over-betting public. So, yeah, not good there either.
AJ, they're beating us, pal. They're beating us. Why is that? You think it's because we don't know anything yet? Is it impossible to judge these teams and know who they truly are after 2 weeks? What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I think it's NFL and college football. Look everywhere around. Like, we don't know. These teams don't have an identity yet. They're all trying to figure it out. They're trying to learn how to win, some of them. So, yeah, I think we're going to have some volatility here, especially in the month of September.
Oh, explore the space. Volatility, certainly a great word in this.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
And who you were mentioning right there was Georgia, because the Georgia-Kentucky matchup, I don't think any of us expected that to go that way. Congrats to Kentucky seemingly having a great ball club. But you're right, teams have been up, teams have been down in the NFL and in college all season thus far.
Gambling always week 2, week 3 is very, very dangerous because you see with your eyes the first week or two and you think you know, but boy, do you have no idea.
Yeah, because the change that goes from week 1 to week 2 is allegedly the biggest. Joining us now is a man who was tasked with that change for like 50 years in the NFL. The greatest head coach of all time, the greatest general manager of all time, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Belichick. Coach! What's going on, boss?
How you doing?
Hey, life is good. Hope you're enjoying the hell out of this season. Your first one not coaching or general managing in an NFL for some time. Can't wait to see you tonight on the Manning Cast. Let's talk about what Tone just brought up. You know, there's a lot of volatility. It's tough to gamble on. You know, what we see in the first week isn't necessarily always what happens in the second week. What did you see in the second week? What do you think is the big talking point coming out of yesterday's slate, and why do you think it is the case?
Well, first of all, I think there's a little bit of that every week, Pat. And AJ, as you know, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. And some teams are, you know, at one point in the season, it's okay to play them, and then at other points, you kind of don't want them on your schedule. So, you know, a team like the Rams that are going through a lot of injuries on the offensive line and at receiver and all that, you know, they may not look the same at a later point in time. But whatever it is, yeah, there's a lot of up and downs, and I think, you know, teams, you know, fixed some things from last week. There was some more production in the passing area. There was, I would say, less production in a lot of cases in the red area. You know, teams just couldn't get the ball in the end zone even though they moved it. And as always, there were some, you know, key games that came down to the last possession, the last play that were could have gone either way, and that's the way it is in the NFL every week.
Couple games were boat races. You know, there have been a few. The Arizona Cardinals delivered one to the Rams, who you were chit-chatting about there, going through some offensive line stuff. The Saints have been able to really just do whatever the hell they want for the first 2 weeks. Alvin Kamara scoring 4 touchdowns. Why is there not more blowouts, you think, in the NFL? Why is there so much parity? You know, you chit-chatted about how that is every single week. The Raiders down 10 in the fourth quarter in Baltimore, come back, get a massive win. Seemingly every week that takes place. Why is there so much parity, you think? All the coaches and players are at an elite level? So,
sure, that's the way the league's set up. Yeah, the worst teams draft the highest, and everybody's got the same amount of money. It's really hard to to get an edge over the other teams. It's very competitive, and it really comes down in a lot of cases to just who plays better, not even who the better team is, but just who plays better on that particular day. And there's a lot of things that can factor into that. Pat, as you and AJ know, the overall mood, mentality, chemistry on the team. What else is kind of happening during the week. Sometimes teams are more ready to play one week than another, and sometimes none of us realize that until Sunday.
Coach, can you tell in warm-ups how the team's going to be? Now, granted, a lot of your teams I just kind of remember being great.
No.
Can you tell? No. When do you tell? Just when the game starts?
Yeah, let's say by middle of the first quarter, you have a pretty good idea of how things are going to go. But sometimes it can shift. I think it just depends on whether you have control of the game or not. Not necessarily control of the score, but control of the game. If you have control of the game, you hope the score will take care of itself. If you don't have control of the game, maybe you're ahead in the score, but you can't really control the game. Then you're kind of hanging on and trying to figure out how you can stay ahead.
That's like the Packers yesterday. They were in control of that game against the Colts, for literally since the first snap. But score, we had a chance on a Hail Mary to win that thing. I assume the Packers were thinking the same thing. Go ahead, AJ.
Coach, Pat mentioned Kyler Murray earlier. Obviously, he had an unbelievable game yesterday. If you are a defensive coordinator, how do you rush this guy? What do you tell your guys? Because you can't just pin your ears back and go. You can't run past the quarterback. How do you kind of have a controlled rush to keep him in the pocket?
Yeah, I wouldn't rush him like they rushed him yesterday, but I think you got to treat him like a running back. Really, you're right. You can't run past the quarterback. That's the biggest mistake. And the contain guys have to contain him. But I would say plays like this where he's behind the line of scrimmage aren't nearly as much of a problem as when he can go up inside. Here, the defense just have to match their guy and cover him and get on Harrison. This shouldn't be as much of a problem. I think you want to make sure that your guys don't come out of coverage until he crosses the line of scrimmage, because that's just going to create big plays. But you've got to rush with good outside and leverage, and the guys inside. Can't let him step up in the pocket once he runs sideways. I think that's a lot better than him going straight ahead. Now, if it's third down, you have a guy that can mirror the quarterback if you're sure that they're going to pass. That's one thing. On early downs when you're trying to stop Connor and the running game and all that, that's a lot harder to do.
Connor runs hard, man.
Oh, yeah.
It looks quick this year, too.
He runs hard.
This is what you can't let happen right here. You can't give up 25 yards like that straight up the middle. You got to make him throw the ball and make him complete it. But it's hard for the defensive line because there's 6 gaps and there's only 4 rushers. So, you can't cover all 6 of those gaps unless you bring more than 4 people. So you have to be able to 2-gap the rushers a little bit, or have somebody cover if you penetrate. Have somebody on the rush kind of cover for a player who's penetrating, so you don't create all that space. The last thing you want to do is run past them. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and you're never going to catch him, seemingly. Last year, he had like a 45-second play or something like that, where he ran like 2 miles on the field, and then he ended up scoring. It is insane the way he can keep it alive. Maybe they got something going over there in Arizona. That's a big-time storyline. Another big-time storyline coming out of the weekend is the refs cheated for the Chiefs, Coach, just like they did for your teams. Just like they did for 20 years. The refs wanted to see Bill Belichick and Tom Brady win, so they gave them calls and screwed over other teams. Now they're doing it for the Chiefs. Why do you think that's immediately the reaction of people? And how hard is it to kind of make sure that your team doesn't hear all the nonsense that is happening outside and seemingly hating your team because they're great regardless?
Yeah. Well, I think you control what you can control, and prepare and play hard every time. I think that Kansas City put themselves in a tough situation with the hands of the face call and made it 4th and long. When you look at the play, the defender gets there a little bit early. Sometimes, they let that go. Sometimes they don't, but he's clearly there early. So I don't think you can second guess the call. It's really just, need to play the ball better and not the man, but that's a tough one.
When did you pay the refs? Was that before every game? When does Andy Reid do that, Coach?
Yeah. I don't. Look, they have a tough job. They really do, and we've all had calls go for us and calls go against us. But I'd say that with the speed and athleticism of the receivers and overall skill players out there, it's a tough job. the one that I'd say the one that always kind of got me was when they would say there really is no uncatchable ball in the National Football League. When you say, well, the ball was over his head, he wouldn't be able to catch it. And their response is always, we never look at it that way. With how great these athletes are and the catches that they can make, I mean, almost every ball is in play for them. So the uncatchable ball it's very, very rare that the officials will let that go. So if there's any kind of defensive, they don't acknowledge that. And so, I think you just got to understand as a defensive player that there is no uncatchable ball, really. And you've got to be ready to, defend everything and make sure that you're very disciplined in terms of, looking back when the ball's in the air and not putting your hands on guys, past 5 yards other than, the normal running kind of chucking that goes on as you run with the receiver.
You having to bicker with a ref about a ball not being catchable and saying you don't know if that's true or not. I do. Our kicker caught it. He was by a neck. There's no way. You have no idea what these guys can do because they don't want to make that call and then have to explain that they didn't think it was catchable. And then, wow, I didn't even think about that little nuance in there. And I do see players and coaches do this a lot more than you see refs do it. Very rarely, I guess.
Very rarely do you see an official say that ball was uncatchable and not throw the flag. It happens a little bit in college. I've seen it more in college, but not in the National Football League. They tell the officials, you've got to respect the ability of the receivers to make these spectacular catches, and there's almost no ball that's uncatchable. I mean, the guy would have to throw it, up in the stands.
The NFL is full of freak athletes, which is why there might be a little bit of a learning curve. Speaking of that, Connor has a question for you, Coach.
Yeah, Coach, how'd you feel about the rookie quarterback performances this weekend? Obviously, there still has yet to be a passing touchdown from any of them, and, credit to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin going up against Bo Nix and also D'Amico going up against Caleb last night. But what do you think about that, and do you think that we're going to see, these guys kind of figure it out sooner or later down the road?
Well, I think the one thing that would help these quarterbacks more than anything is just a good balanced attack, and Daniels had more of that than anybody else. They were able to run the ball against the Giants pretty consistently. I think that made it a much, I would say, easy day, but an easier day for him. The tough thing for the quarterbacks when you got to go back and throw every down and throw on third down and throw against a big pass rush, and they know you're going to throw. So, Denver's played from behind the first 2 weeks. Chicago's, even though they won, they haven't, really been in control of the game. I thought that, the running game really helped Daniels at Washington. He ran less and was less rushed because of a better running game. So, good complementary football will help them out. But look, those guys have a lot to learn, and we'll see how quickly they can process it. But it looks like protection is going to be a problem for Chicago all year, and we'll see how it goes here in Denver. But they've obviously going up against Pittsburgh. That's a problem for most every team.
Yeah, T.J. Watt exists. So that is certainly something. Caleb, he was pressured 23 times, most in the NFL yesterday in the slate. Obviously, going into tonight, we shall see. And D'Amico brought it 41.7% of the time. He brought pressure, simulated pressure, is what the stats and analytics are saying. It's like they knew it, they saw it, and they said, "Let's go get it." That's so. As soon as you find the weakness, you're going, Bill. That's just classic football, and you're going to have to stop it.
Well, I think this is really an issue for Chicago, just in terms of the overall team construction, like the way they decided to do it. You look at a team like Detroit in their division, and Detroit's got three really good linemen with Sewell, Ragnow, and Decker, and those guys give generally Goff a lot of protection. The Bears have really put their resources into a lot of money, a lot of draft choices into receivers, but they've had problems on their offensive line, and it doesn't really look like that's gotten much better, whether D'Amico brings it or doesn't bring it. They had trouble with a 4-man rush, a 5-man rush, and just single blocks up there have been a problem for them. So, I like the receivers. I think quarterback's got a chance, but it's tough, and I think it's going to get tougher. AJ, as you know better than I, Chicago in November and December that's a fun place to have to rely on throwing the ball. So the combination of let's say struggle running game, and then having to throw a lot and pass protect a lot. I don't think that's really playing into the strength of that's not a strength of the Bears team. So not really sure how they're putting that together. But to chuck it 50 times in Chicago on a long-term basis just
Good
seems
outlook.
tough.
Yeah,
That
seems-
certainly isn't what Ditka tried to do.
Seems tough. Seems tough. Go ahead, AJ.
Coach, in that Houston game, Joe Mixon, there's the hip drop tackle situation that was not called, and it's something they've been talking about and emphasizing. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they're going to be is there going to be extra emphasis on that now to look for it?
You know, AJ, that's always a great question. And you know, when they put in a new rule, I think there's always a little bit of a learning curve on how the rule is going to be officiated and what the officials can see, what they can call, and what they can't. I think part of the hip drop conversation, when I was a part of those, was that, well, if it's not called in the game, we'll find the player for it after the game if we miss it. And look, I think the intent is to prevent injuries, which is, of course, a good thing, and everybody's all for that. What is and isn't a hip drop tackle is sometimes, a little bit hard to define. We can look at it, and some would say it is, some would say it isn't. There's a couple that are clear cut, and then there's a lot that are gray. So I think as this gets more defined and there are more examples, and it all gets sorted out, I don't think this is going to be a problem in the long term, but I think the first few weeks is definitely, an adjustment there. And what is and what isn't. I think when you go back and look at a call like the targeting, if you remember the targeting calls when those came in on defenseless receivers, that was another one. Is it targeting? Isn't targeting? I think we've gotten to the point now, we're several years down the road, where first of all, you don't see the penalty very often, and second of all, it's much more. I think everybody understands much better what is and what isn't targeting. And that's become clear. So I think eventually the hip drop tackle, kind of like the horse collar tackle, will, eventually work itself out. But right now there's a little bit of a process here that we're going through.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see which ref throws it first. It's almost like the refs are kind of hesitant to call it too, because if you call the first one, it's wrong and it's a new thing, then it becomes an uproar everywhere. A lot of pressure and added shit for these refs. Once again, as you talked about, have an incredibly difficult job. Speaking of difficult jobs, the Saints turning that thing around. They were up against the cap wives. They didn't have a quarterback. They lost their coach. How are they going to figure it out? They certainly did. D-Butt's got a question for you.
Oh, yeah, Coach, I asked you a couple weeks ago which defense I could expect to be good early in the season. You said the Saints, but offensively, they've been great when it's Clint Kubiak. Offense, Derek Carr is spinning it big back-to-back weeks. What's your thoughts on this New Orleans Saints offense early in the season?
Well, one of the best things that the Saints have done is play from ahead, right? And so they've gotten ahead early in the game. They've been able to, run their offense, which is, the stretch, boot, try to stay out of third down. Kamara's running well. I think it'll be this is really an interesting team. I think that they're one of the oldest teams in the league, one of the most experienced teams in the league. And I think that's really helped them, to this point with their execution, situational football, etc. The question is, will they be able to hold up, and will they be able to sustain that, or will they wear down a little bit and so forth, that you always worry about with teams that have a little bit of age on them. But certainly they've gotten off to a great start, and to beat Dallas like that in Dallas is very impressive. Long way to go, still a long way to go, but. Clint Kubiak to Gary Kubiak to Kyle Shanahan to Mike Shanahan. There's a lot of history with this, stretch offense from Coach Shanahan, West Coast passing, that's really stood the test of time. It's been a great offensive system through the years, and certainly they're off to a great start down there in New Orleans. 40 points a game is incredible.
First week, they go into halftime with 30. This time it was like 35 going into half. What is the key to like a hot start? And that is a wild question, I guess, because humans react differently. But there's been a couple teams that I've been on, and once again, I just have a front row seat to all this shit, where you think the team is ready, and then second half is the only time they show up. And then there's been a couple teams where first half show up, second half kind of lose their way. And I've always been confused about why this happens. Is it human nature? Is their team just shows up better? Like, if you're playing against the Saints, first half we're going to have to be there.
Right.
What's the messaging, you think, and how did the Saints become this team?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's two ways to score, right, offensively. One is on explosive plays, and the other is to drive the ball through the red area. So I think, number one, if you can eliminate the explosive plays, which they've been able to hit, and force them to drive the ball through the red area, you just have a lot more chances on defense to stop them. So, number one, don't give up big plays. Don't give it all up in one play. and then be ready to play good red area defense when they get the ball down there. Look, they're going to move the ball. They're going to have some red area opportunities, but red area defense will be very important in trying to hold the score down. Certainly not going to win many games giving up 42, 45 points and that type of thing. So you got to find a way to to put a lid on it. And number one, don't give up big plays, and number two, play good red area defense are the two best ways to keep the points manageable.
I've been a part of a buzzsaw down in New Orleans. First play of the game, strip sack touchdown. So they scored. Yeah, that was first play of the game.
Uh-oh.
And that place just went absolutely bananas. And they hung 60, I think, that night. I think Jimmy Graham might have just scored another touchdown from that game, to be honest with how it gets going. But that's a whole nother department. Like, if they were home there, now obviously going to Dallas and do that place is not easy. That is a loud place. That is infectious. It's like, are the Saints all the way back? It feels like it. Let's go to Green Bay. They are ending up being a team that is making their fans say best win they've ever seen in their life as a Packers fan. Ty Schmidt?
Yeah, potentially, Super Bowls aside. But, Coach, in a situation like that, and you had something like this, obviously the circumstances were a little bit different, but a couple years ago against Buffalo when the winds were swirling and it was like 60 miles an hour or something like that, but you guys basically ran it 50 times. Packers did that yesterday. I think they ended up having 54 rushes. How difficult is it to win a game like that in today's NFL when you kind of just have to stay the course, but it is a pass-happy league, and at a certain point there, that the other side knows, like, okay, they're just going to try to run it down our throats. How difficult is it to actually win a game like that?
It should be tough. It should be really tough. The Buffalo game you were talking about was a very low-scoring game, but it's a couple of weeks that the Colts have had a tough time stopping the run. They stay in the same front for the most part. They don't really make a lot of defensive adjustments. They kind of do what they do. Gus Bradley believes in execution and in doing the same thing over and over again. But I think in some respects that simplifies things a little bit for the offense. And so they just didn't do a good job at all in the running game, and I think everybody kind of knew that that's what the game was going to be. And Green Bay did an excellent job of controlling the game and running the ball when, like I said, everybody kind of knew that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, we all knew, Bill, didn't we? 194 yards rushing in the first quarter was like a record. I don't know what record, but it was a record, and we knew it was going to come. So Gus Bradley was telling the defense all week, right? Hey, they're going to run this thing a lot. They're going to run this thing a lot. They were prepared for it. Or is there a thought that Gus Bradley was like, hey, everybody on earth seemingly thinks they're going to run the ball. Malik Willis might throw this thing 30 to 40 times. Do you think this was overthinking? Do you think this was what do you think it was from the Colts side? Because I'm going to let you know, as a Colts fan, obviously, they did pay me to be a Colts fan. Way too much money to kick a football for way too long of a time. Like, I'm pretty freaked out about what happened yesterday because that seemingly was the most predictable outcome another team was going to do to you, and we weren't able to stop it. Even though it was a close game, 16-10, yada, 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 we were in it till the end. But that was alarming. Should I panic completely, or is this just, hey, and I don't want your Colts bias to come through. I would like actual football answer here. Should I be panicking right now or no?
Well, look, I would say the way I look at the game, Pat, is that at some point, you've got to be able to stop the running game at some point. And so if whatever you're doing isn't working, then you go to the next step, whether that's bring another guy into the front, whether you stunt the front, whether you bring in a bigger player to, be more of an anchor on the line of scrimmage, whatever it happens to be, you find a way to stop. And if that doesn't work, then you go to the next step. And whether you go to that final step in a 4-minute offense where you're trying to get the ball back, or whether you go to it, in a short yardage situation. But I think you have to have a way going into the game. And I always told our defensive coordinators this is, okay, what are we going to do to stop the run? Like, what are we going to do if they get this going, whatever it is, their stretch play, their counter play, what are we going to do to stop this? And if our base isn't good enough, then we got to have whatever the next step is. And if that's not good enough, then we got to have another level after that. That's the way I looked at it. And so I think the way the Colts better look at it this week is, they had such a tough time with Green Bay. Really, it's been 2 weeks in a row that whatever they need to do, they better figure out something to do with this week, or this movie's just going to keep showing. It's going to be the same thing all over again.
I don't want to see this movie again. I'm done with the movie. I like seeing some movies multiple times. Okay, I've watched, Avatar, the original, numerous times.
Top Gun Maverick.
I watched the final 47 minutes of that thing probably 100 different times. I don't want to see that movie again.
No.
I know you do, Ty.
Oh, yeah, every day.
What a day for Packers fans. You guys thought you were going to lose that game. Everybody on TV, with the Colts were their fun pick. Everybody, I like the Colts. I like the Colts. I'm like, no, what are we? And then watch the game unfold, and it's like, nah, we're getting our asses beat. I don't like that at all. A lot of season left. I haven't lost faith. AP Tone has a question for you, Coach.
Yeah, Coach. Minnesota Vikings get a huge win yesterday, and everyone talks about the Kevin O'Connell offense, and I believe it's part of the Kubiak scheme as well and the Shanahan scheme. But not a lot of people are talking about how dominant their defense has been to start the season, and obviously Brian Flores comes from your coaching tree. They are leading the league in quarterback pressures. What is it about Brian Flores and his defense that makes it so difficult for other teams?
Well, look, I think Connor, I think you've seen a lot of good defense played by some of the most experienced coordinators in the league, and I mentioned that whether it be the Saints defense with Dennis Allen or Coach Flores in Minnesota, you've seen some really good defensive efforts. Coach Schwartz went down to Jacksonville. They did a good job down there this week. Coach Bowles in Tampa has done a great job, especially their red area defense against the Lions. So, some of these defensive coaches with experienced defensive players, I think definitely have an edge in the early part of the season. Coach Spagnuolo, even though I would say they're playing with a little bit less than they had last year, but they've done a good job in the most critical situations of the game of playing well at getting the ball back at the end of the game, last week against Cincinnati. So, you got to give a lot of credit, I would say, to the coaching staff and also the veteran players that know how to make adjustments, that know how to play good situational football. I think you've seen that show up with a lot of these experienced defensive coordinators.
That Vikings team is fun, man. Kevin O'Connell can drop a play for me to play quarterback, it seems like. Now Sam Darnold's playing his best ball. Justin Jefferson, let's look out for that quad. But B-Flow's defense has always been praised and heralded, and it feels like it's showing up in Minnesota. Let's talk about tonight, Coach. We got Falcons and Eagles. Eagles favored by 5.5 at home in Philadelphia. It's going to be a rompous atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Saquon Barkley runs wild last week. Is there going to be more of that? Do you think the Atlanta Falcons bounce back from a rough start? How do you see tonight going, Coach?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how both teams adjust to what happened in the first week of the season. Defensively, Philadelphia gave up too many big plays to Green Bay, and so they've got to tighten that up on that side of the ball. Offensively, they just turned the ball over too much. They had a couple bad snaps, interception. Green Bay got their hands on a couple other balls, so I think Eagles got to do a better job, and we'll do a better job of taking care of the football. But as we all know, a couple turnovers in any game can swing it a lot. So, I think those are the things the Eagles need to work on. The Falcons, they're not a big turnover team on defense, so it would surprise me to see them turn the ball over much because it really hasn't been their history, or they don't have the playmakers to do that consistently. But they're going to need to do a good job against the receivers, and even with Brown out, you still got to deal with Smith, Goddard, Barkley out of the backfield. And so I think it'll be a good test for the Atlanta defense. We'll see whether or not, Atlanta's offensive line can get the running game going. Philadelphia looked a little vulnerable on that in the first game, but if they can tighten that up and make it a passing game, then, Philadelphia's got a good pass rush that'll probably create some problems for Atlanta. But, Atlanta's going to come into Philly. They'll definitely be using the silent count tonight, Pat. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I know they used it at home last week and messed it up, but they should be working on the silent count all for the whole game tonight because it'll be really loud there in Philadelphia. So it'll be interesting to see how much the team's improved from last week. And certainly, the Falcons got two good running backs. If they can get Robinson going, I'm sure they'll throw it to him and hand it to him. But if they can get him going, and get the running game and get some, let's say good solid passes, high completion percentage, good solid games, stay out of long yardage, that's their best chance to stay in the game and not give up those big plays to Smith, Goddard, Barkley, and the offense.
Coach, you're going to be on the Manning Cast for the first quarter, right? Are you going to be live from the stadium?
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Okay. I can't wait to see how that works out. Shout out to the tech people behind the scenes, Omaha, NFL Films, I assume, the entire team that's a part of that.
We'll see about the reception in Philly too. You know that I haven't always gotten the most love there.
Are you walking out on the field? Are you going to be? Are you giving a full on?
Well, I don't know. I'll be out there at some point, but that's like they have a great greeting for you. When they introduce the players one by one, it's like Pat McAfee sucks. AJ Hawk sucks. Coached by Bill Belichick really sucks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Philly.
That's when we decided to stop going out individually, just run out of team, and do it all at once.
Smart play.
Each guy to get his own individual, lashing from the Philly fans. So we said, like, forget that. Let's all go out there together and let them boo us all at once.
Yeah, shout out to Philadelphia having great sports fans. They are very passionate.
Oh yeah,
Flyers haven't
very
won
passionate.
in forever.
Yeah.
The worst franchise in the NHL.
Yeah, and Sidney Crosby just signed on for 2 more years. Shout out to Flyers fans. Pittsburgh Penguins legends going to come into your barn and continue to annihilate for the next 2 years. But those Eagles fans.
Well, great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, great weekend in Philadelphia. The PLL championship yesterday over at Villanova was awesome. Great game. Utah looked impressive. Beat my Maryland boys, but a lot of not behind the back. There you go.
Show him.
There we go.
Utah guy. Utah guy did
There we go.
And then he did this one. I think he did this one as well. The jump up
There you
under
go.
the leg thing.
Top goal of the year.
It was sick.
Those guys are so talented. They're so talented. It's unbelievable on how the goalies can stop those shots going 100 miles an hour from point blank range. They're really good. So Paul's done a great job with that league. But it was exciting to watch some of that yesterday afternoon. I taped it and got to see some action there. Got my lacrosse fix in and.
It'd
be a great night today in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it will be. Absolutely. Can't wait to see how it all works out. And I'm sure they're going to clap for you. You're retired. You're going off for the game. They understand that. They're good sports fans. They'll give you a nice round of applause. With lacrosse, though, you've always been tied to lacrosse. Who was the wide receiver?
Chris Hogan.
Chris Hogan. This guy I never played football for. He played lacrosse. Bill loves lacrosse. You just always loved lacrosse? When did you get into the sport?
Yeah, well, in Maryland, there's 2 things that are really important in Maryland. Crabs and lacrosse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Crab cake.
Football. Crab cakes and football.
We all knew that was a lie. The football part was a lie.
No, the movie.
Yeah.
Sack lunch.
Wedding crash.
I was lied to.
The Ravens are important. Yeah, the Ravens are important. But it's lacrosse and crab cakes.
They didn't figure it out over there.
Those 2 big things about Maryland.
That one too.
All
and
right.
the flag, that's pretty recognizable too.
Yeah, I think so. Good flag.
Yeah.
Good flag. The 2 yellow. Yeah, that is a very strong flag. All right, Coach. Good luck tonight. We appreciate the hell out of you.
Okay, great. Great to be with you every Monday, Pat. Look forward to it, as always.
Hell yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Coach Bill Belichick. He's going to be live at the stadium. That's going to go well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh, great.
Put him in the old booger mobile.